Hey, welcome back, everybody. HSC Podcast number 18. We're in prime time. We got Big Box Steve on the mic and the Big Smooth Derek. That's all we're going to have tonight, and that's all you need, because you know what? I think at the end of the day, we're the best.
That's true.
That's true. That's true. So tonight, we're going to talk about some interesting subjects, what's happening in the media right now. And it's kind of interesting when you talk about the media and you wonder, like, why are they pushing different things, and why do we hear so much about like certain things? And I don't know why, I mean, we can speculate and we'll do a conspiracy theory, I hope soon. But what's interesting is we're going to talk about the Chappelle attack. We're going to talk about the Johnny Depp trial, and we're going to talk about the Roe versus Wade leak. So all three of those things, it almost seems like these are kind of the media pushing them out. Like, do you feel that way? Do you feel like everywhere you look, those are the three things you see?
Yeah, definitely. That was the thing, is like everyone is, people like the Depp Heard trial. It's like, so they're like talking like it's the OJ Simpson trial or something. Like, people are so fascinated and have taken sides like so hard, and it's kind of crazy with that. The Chappelle, that just happened, and that was just like everyone's piggybacking off of Will Smith and Chris Rock on that one. And then the Roe v. Wade, that was just like boom, just all out of nowhere.
That was really out of nowhere. But interesting what you said about the Chappelle attack and the piggyback of Will Smith, right? Because I feel like that's a big piggyback. It's everything you read, they're comparing those two things. Do those two things really compare?
No, not at all. Except the big thing was Chris Rock got up there and joked and says, right. Was that Will Smith going by?
But are those completely? They're kind of two completely different things, though. But they keep comparing them,
right?
But this guy literally, like, I mean, Chappelle hasn't said anything yet. He's literally like getting ready to start his set.
Well, it was actually, he was finishing. It was an encore.
Oh, so it was after.
Yeah, so he was he was doing his encore at the very end when this happened. What I was reading about it was the guy that attacked him is an aspiring rapper. And he actually had a song about attacking Chappelle in the Hollywood Bowl.
Oh, that's interesting, because if you watch the media, so as I was watching some of the reports on this, what I thought was interesting is they weren't really like condemning the guy for doing it. They were almost like saying, because of the stuff Chappelle had been saying over the last few year or the 6 months or whatever, that's what made it happen. Like, he was doing it because of the things Chappelle was saying. That's what I felt the media was pushing.
Right. Well, of course, that's what they want to push. Because they really want to push out Chappelle.
Because he's opposite of, he's very opposite of leftists, right? Like, I mean, if you watch his stuff, especially over the last year to 2 years, he's not really right. I wouldn't say he's right at all. He's just, he's really just calling out, like what he sees.
Right. It's like kind of like what comedians used to do. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're kind of like pushing it in the narrative that he got attacked because of the things he was saying.
Right.
But what you're saying is like this is probably a dude that was trying to like promote his album, because he said in his album he was going to do it, and he did it.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And now, since the security beat him up, now they're trying to get even more publicity and sue and everything. And
but did you hear? I don't know if you watched any of the videos, but so the security has him in the back and they're like stomping him out. And then Chappelle goes out and starts stomping him too. And you can see he still has his mic or his ear, whatever on, and you can hear him. He's like, stomp that nigger out. And he's like just stomping him out. And it's like, really, Chappelle? You can't do that. Like, you can't say that while you're still on the mic. Like, you could literally hear him saying that.
Yeah. I don't know too. That could have been part of the show, because he even came back out and he's like, well, they're in the back beating his ass. So
right. They're in the back stomping him. But if you watch the video, like I watched a couple different videos, and there's probably 4 or 5 guys like stomping on it.
right.
So that's kind of rough, I get it. Like, you went up, and it's not like he tried to stab him, like it was like it was like a high school junior.
It was a very
tackle.
bad try at a tackle.
yeah, right. It was like a JV tackle, right? It was like the guy that couldn't make varsity, and he went in and like missed a tackle.
The problem with that is, if you go and you're like, oh, he wasn't, he was harmless, and then who knows, like, you're going to take the next one lightly. And
right.
That's the thing. It's like, it happens, and, it's a fake sport, but wrestling is fake, right? But sometimes fans will go in there, and then it's fair game. Then those wrestlers actually are doing real stuff to them.
Right.
Because you can't have people just going in there attacking.
So do you think that the Will Smith scenario has anything to do with it? Do you think that this might have instigated that?
No, I don't think so. The Will Smith one is like, that's Hollywood. That's Hollywood privilege. He can go and do that, and that's fine. I mean, he's part of he went on stage just a little bit later. It wasn't like if it was a fan going and an outsider attacking, that's a different thing. Where Will Smith and Chris Rock were on the inside together. So I think they're totally different.
Yeah, it's just weird that it happened so fast afterwards, and then the media is trying to compare them, though, and that,
right?
So that was interesting. And I also wonder, does it have anything to do with? I mean, I know you said that like he's a rapper and he said he would do that. Does it have anything to do with Chappelle's views?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't find any thing about him, like, he was just a dude, wasn't he? He wasn't like pro, I didn't see anything that put him as pro, LBGTQ.
all those words.
Yeah.
All those letters.
And so, yeah, I didn't, usually if something was like that, they'd come out with their propaganda if it was.
Right. But he's not like paid by Antifa or, I mean, it's just so weird to me. I mean, I guess if you're really, if that's because what's going to happen? Like, does his album get big after that? If that's what he said he was going to do on his album, I don't think so.
Not really. I mean, he could barely take Chappelle down. Chappelle tripped.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like 160 pound, like 6 foot dude.
Yeah. It's like yeah. It's like, how's your rep if you can't even tackle Dave Chappelle?
That's what I'm saying. It's almost like he was paid to do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it sets a weird precedent, though. This is okay. I mean,
yeah. I don't know. And I guess he was carrying a knife on him,
but he didn't pull the knife out for 100% for sure.
You never know, like, what would have happened if he would have tackled him to the ground too.
Right. So
maybe on top of him.
Maybe that was his goal in the end.
Yeah.
So does it set a weird precedent, for comedians and performers, maybe even singers as well? If they're not on your same they're not on your same side, is it okay to go ahead and attack them?
I don't think it's okay to do any of that ever. I mean, that's the whole thing you get to with, we want everyone to have freedom of speech, but then you want to go out and attack someone who doesn't believe the same thing as you.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second, because I kind of feel like both sides, when you're talking about left and right, everybody totes freedom of speech. It doesn't matter what side you're on.
Right. Yeah. They use it to whatever they want their
Right.
agenda to be.
Yeah. And that seems really wrong to me, because now you're saying freedom of speech is okay for me, but not for you.
Right.
And that's kind of what we've seen for the last 2 years.
Mm. I think even longer than that, it's been like that. Yeah, wait, like I've read stuff, and you know how they talk about canceling movies like American Pie and stuff like that. And it's like, these were movies made in the 90s and the early 80s. Just let it be.
Well, I mean, even at the same time, it's just a movie,
Right.
right? And then I think one of the things that so I'm not a huge, not actually at all a Donald Trump fan, but at the same time, like for 4 years, like this guy, I felt like this guy couldn't say anything without everybody saying, he can't say that, or he's wrong. Like I felt like that was a big like censorship thing of your president.
I feel that's just the way it is now too, because I couldn't stand Trump and I can't stand Biden, but same thing happens to Biden now. You got all
It's
these let's
terrible.
go Brandon and all this stuff. And it's just like, where did we get to a point where there's, I always even said with Trump, I wasn't a big fan of his, but I was talking to a guy I used to work with, and I said, just give him a chance. Let's just hear him out first and let's see what happens. But no one even gave him a chance from the beginning.
Right.
Not to say he wasn't great at all, but it was like no one gave him a chance. Same with Biden. No one was giving him a chance whatsoever.
Right. And 100%, right? I think, I mean, even Obama felt like that a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actually it probably kind of started with Bush, but Bush was the first president that I feel like wasn't a good speaker.
Right.
And I probably think that helped a little bit into these people's like, because he didn't speak well, we can condemn him, and
that's the way SNL works. You got someone making fun of you you have someone being George Bush and being like the good old boy and like
right.
smoking weed and all this stuff, and then the next thing you know, when SNL has The Rock playing Barack Obama.
Right. No, and so it was like, it's like a culmination, right?
Yeah. What's funny though is if you look at history though, in the last 5 or 6 presidencies, Bush W had like the highest rating at a point in the presidency, like approval rating. Now it has a lot probably to do with 9/11 and bringing the country together.
Right.
But who's to say what happened with COVID? Shouldn't COVID have brought the country together instead of torn us apart?
It should have, but why didn't it? Because the others, I mean, they really like it, they played it politically, right?
Yeah.
Where it should have been like, hey, let's get together, let's do this as a group. Instead, they used it to say, let's push between right and left.
Right.
And so yeah, so I think the last 4 years plus COVID years, like the separation right now, it's really bad.
Right. Yeah, it's to the point now where like people on like I've heard of like on dating sites and stuff, and like, if you're this, I won't
Right.
date.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not even like a race thing or like anything
No.
anymore. Now it's like a political thing.
Right.
Yeah, I saw a video. This guy was going around, and it was just a YouTube video of some kid, what's the worst turnoff for a guy? He's asking these women that. And like more than half of them said if he's a Republican. Like that's your worst turnoff if he's a Republican. And so that's the world we're living in now. But I do think that has a little bit to do, and maybe not this particular Dave Chappelle attack, but I think that might be like what might be coming in the future. Right? You got to be careful, as an entertainer, what you're going up and saying. Like I think Will Smith, even though that's a Hollywood, insider thing, that still sets a little bit of a precedence. Like you can't say what you want to say anymore.
We're coming to a part where we're going to have the Demolition Man society.
Right.
Like where you can't have anything that's no cussing, no doing this. The only thing we're going to have is commercials as, this jingles. I mean,
well, I love Demolition Man. And if you guys are listening, you haven't seen Demolition Man, I think that's a very realistic look at what the world's going to be like in a very short amount of years. We're pushing both of those sides apart, and these big corporations are just taking over. And it's not going to be Taco Bell in particular, but in the movie, like Taco Bell's the huge corporation.
Well, that's although
well, it's PepsiCo. It's yeah.
I was talking to our friend Dustin a little while ago and about his adventures, which we got to get him on the podcast to talk about that.
Yeah, he wants to do a live. I just talked to him the other day.
But he was talking about, I don't know what country it was, but they had like no fast food except a Taco Bell. And he said it was like a fancy Taco Bell. So it's already coming.
Right. It's just moving from the whatever we call the other parts of the world. We call them third world countries, but they call themselves just emerging. That it's moving this way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's like what's that movie? One of my favorite movies with Luke Wilson.
Oh, Idiocracy.
Idiocracy. And
I was thinking about that. That was the other one I was thinking about.
It's like, hey, welcome to Carl's Jr. Or it's like, like everything you do is Carl's Jr. and welcome to Costco.
Yes. Well, we've already, you think about that because they've talked about it. Donald Trump was a reality TV star and he became president.
Right.
Idiocracy, you have the wrestler who,
right.
The joke is the Rock has his little TV show where he talks about becoming president. So we, in the near future, we could be having a wrestler as president.
The reality is the Rock would get more votes than you could ever imagine.
I would kind of feel like the Rock might bring unity to everyone.
If he really ran, can you imagine how many actual votes that guy would get? Like a lot.
I feel like if he ran independent,
right,
that would have been amazing. That's how you would bring the United States back together. Everyone would join with the Rock.
But and then you got to worry about then what would happen? Like, could he really run the country?
You never know. Reagan did it.
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking. Well, he was an actor back in the 50s.
Yeah, 60s. I know. He was also the governor and everything, so right. He had politics.
He got some political stance in there. So let's move to the next topic, and this is super interesting to me. So let's talk about the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial. This one's crazy.
Yes.
So outside of the stardom and because domestic violence is a real thing, right? And so it doesn't matter if you're talking about actors and actresses and famous people, but domestic violence is a real thing, right?
Right.
And so here's the issue that you run into this one. And I kind of want to hear what you think about this. Because I'm in the belief that domestic violence goes both ways. So
I feel like in this situation, they are both super toxic individuals that got together, and they're both just wailing on and doing just horrible mind control, mind abuse, everything. They both are just so bad together. Yeah, I just feel like they're both. You can't go. I don't know how you can go to. In the trial, you have to side with the Depp because it's both sides. Whereas in Amber Heard is making it sound like it's just Johnny Depp.
Right.
But it's both people. They're both pretty insane.
Yeah. So the question is though, or the problem is yeah, what you're saying is that Amber Heard's making it feel like Johnny Depp's the only one, kind of based on the fact that it can only be a man versus a woman, right?
Right.
And that doesn't feel right to me because I feel like you can have domestic violence on both sides.
Right. Well, you've had instances. Tanya Catane with Chuck Finley back in the early 80s, late 80s, early 90s. He was a pitcher for the Angels. Tanya Catane, she got domestic violence against her. Hope Solo, she with Jeremy Stevens, the Hope Solo, the soccer player with the tight end for Seattle Seahawks, Jeremy Stevens. She got domestic violence against her. It's happened, but it's not as much aware out there.
Right. I mean, the norm is the other way, right?
No,
the norm's the other way.
But and again, most of it is
oh yeah, and
male's fault. I mean,
exactly. You can't. So here's the problem: is that when you go into a case like this, it's like it's hard not to blame the man because we already know that 90% of it is men. And so how does that? I mean, that really works against Johnny Depp in this situation because that's historically, statistically, like the way it goes. And so it kind of sucks to be on the 10% of that side.
Right. And for me though, I feel like though he's on both sides of that because I do believe he has probably assaulted her.
Right.
But she also cut off his finger and pooped in his bed and like all the mental abuse that she has caused to him. Yeah. So I can't just say 100% this person is in a, better than this person. And that's why this is such a crazy thing going on.
Because this one feels like a very equal, like they're just both like messing each other up.
Yeah.
Because even if you watch the testimonies, like when you hear him testimony about her and then her testimony about him, and you're just like, wow, you are two just messed up people. And messing each other up.
Depp is a raging alcoholic. I mean, like that's been going on for like 40 years.
Right. But so I don't know if you saw her testimony because she was the most recent testimony. There is a little bit of exaggeration happening.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can't tell me he's taken 10 MDMA pills in a night. Like, I mean, I've been there and you can't take 10 MDMA pills in a night. Like you'd be ridiculously like stupid.
Well, there's the whole, I don't know if you read about the, how she said that she carried this brand of cover up in her purse for 2 years to cover up all her things. And then the company came out and goes, we didn't start making that.
We didn't even make it then. Right.
So that's where it comes to a point where he's probably has done stuff, but yes, she's hurting battered women everywhere for some of the stuff she's been saying.
Well, that's what I mean. I think she's going over the top instead of just being more honest, if that makes sense. Like,
Right.
instead of, she's trying to like make it worse than it is. And if you just made it like it is, you'd probably be fine. Like you're making your case. But when you're going so far over the top, now you're making it sound ridiculous.
Well, yeah. And it's, I think for one thing, I think she was doing this in one part to make herself more valuable for roles, movie roles.
Right.
Like, look at her, here's a survivor and all this. And, said Johnny Depp's not being able to do, he got taken out of the Fantastic Beasts series. They were going to make another Pirates. They canned that one. But, she had her in Aquaman 2, her role's been cut down to 10 minutes. Like they cut her down completely. So it's kind of backfired. And she might not be getting it. It's like they both torpedoed each other's careers.
Right. And she like overplayed the James Franco thing, right? Where she was trying to make a big deal about him getting mad about James Franco. But she also had a bunch of pictures of herself with James Franco. It's like, how can you like overplay the James Franco thing, but when you actually have all these like incidents with him?
Right.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I think like you're going over the top. Like, just be honest, and you're probably okay.
Well, that's what they need to tell people whenever they go into trials like this is just be honest, because they'll catch you in a lie.
Right.
They always do. I mean, look like A Few Good Men, that, right? They catch you in a lie. They figure it out when you say, because they have it all in transcripts. So then they could figure out, well, you said this 20 minutes ago, but now you're saying this.
I feel like people understand, like everybody's not stupid. Like you can't just pull the wool over people's eyes. Like if you're honest and you show it, and like you're telling the truth, like people will see that. But people know when you're exaggerating, right? Like I'm going down, the bar and I'm telling all the women I'm an astronaut, it's not going to work.
It reminds me of, you remember Anita.
Right. Yeah. Like
it's like they tell you something and then you can't believe anything that comes out of their mouth.
Well, and that's what I feel like Amber Heard is doing to herself. Right. And even though I don't think Johnny Depp was doing that, I think he also has a stigma around him where people are like, dude, come on. Like, we know you're a drunk. Like, we've seen this for years. Like, don't pretend like you're not. So he's kind of going the opposite way. He's like trying to underplay it instead of just admitting, like,
it's
yeah.
Like, so I have a glass of wine in the morning.
Yeah, no, you had a bottle of wine in the morning. Yeah. It's not a glass of wine, it's a bottle of wine.
Even if you have a glass of wine every morning for 40 years, that's an alcoholic.
Right. It's not dude never had a glass of wine. Come on. It was one bottle of wine for the first 20 years, and it was 2 bottles of wine for the next 20 years, right? And again, so it's like he's underplaying, she's overplaying, and then now you got to decide like who's more honest.
And then the other thing is like they asked all of Johnny Depp's ex, and most of them were like, no, we never saw anything like that. So there's no history. But
they did confirm the drinking.
Yes.
But they didn't confirm the violence.
Right.
Right. So that's what, again, if she would have just been more like, hey, he just was drinking a lot, and instead of like over exaggerating the violence, now you're like, well, if he was drinking a lot, like we don't know what could have happened, right?
It's like he doesn't know. He could have been blacked out. He probably doesn't know what he's doing.
Right. And so now let's just focus on the drinking instead of the violence. And I think she's putting herself in a hole there.
Well, the problem hole with this is this is just about libel. So she's probably still going to win. Like, I don't think, because he obviously has done some stuff.
Right.
And I mean, she didn't put in her op-ed piece about pooping in bed or cutting guy's finger off and doing all that stuff. So,
But this is just a defamation case.
right. Because of the art, and that's where it's kind of like she never mentions him by name.
Right.
It's just an op-ed, like article about it. And so it's like, oh, it's implied that it's me, and this is why I'm losing roles.
Yeah. And when you think about a defamation case, though, and then after the actual testimony, that's why I think she's hurting herself.
Right.
Because you're actually like you're making them choose between defamation and not, and you're going over the top with what
Right.
you're talking about.
Yeah. So then the people call BS.
Right. And they're like, yeah, you are defamating, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those where it's like you're caught in a lie here. How do we know you haven't been? And that's the whole thing about why, if I, for victims out there, how mad they must be to see this happening, having someone like this come out here and just flat out make up some stuff. I mean, it hurts their causes completely.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, when you think about, and again, when you're talking about like most of it is, when you're talking about domestic violence, you're talking about, men against women. And she's definitely hurting that case and making a stronger case for women against men, which is it's very a low percentage, but when something's politicized like this and it's as big as this, like you're really hurting not just yourself, but the whole female race in this point, to where they got to work a little harder, and that's an issue. The problem with Amber Heard is like she is, if you watch her throughout the videos, she's smiling and she's crying and she's laughing, and it's like she's crazy. I mean,
That's kind of been for me like a known fact for years.
right.
Like even before she and Johnny Depp got together, you could just tell that girl was crazy.
But I mean, you shouldn't be, if that was really the case in your trial, like you should be better about that. Even if you weren't that way, like you should act better than she's act. Like it's been,
yeah, I mean, if I'm her lawyers, I'd be so mad. It's like, don't even show
Right.
any emotion.
Right. Like just sit there, straight face. But she's not, like she's smiling half the time, and then they like talk to her, and then she's like mad, and then she goes from smiling to unhappy in like 1 second, and you're like, after her lawyer just talked to her.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, isn't it? And like with Johnny Depp, he's a smooth guy.
He's an actor, one of the best actors ever.
Yeah. So he gets up on, when they were going after him, he was making her lawyer look like a fool.
Right. And even when
he objected to his own question.
Right. But when she's up there and you see the video of him while she's making her testimony, it's even better, like watching him, because it's that's how you should look when somebody's testifying against you.
Right.
And maybe it is because he's a great actor, right? And we don't know that, but at the same time, like that's the way people think, especially if you're in the jury or if you're the judge or if you're watching this. Like, what are you going to think? You're going to be like, that's real, because that's what actors do. They make you believe it's real.
Right.
So I think Johnny Depp's going to get, whether it's acting or not acting, he's done a great job if you watch most of the videos.
Right. For trial 101, what you're supposed to do, it's like,
this guy's doing the video on it. Like they're going to record this And
Right.
here's how
This is
you
what to do. This is what not to do.
right. This is Amber's what you don't do. Johnny's what you do. This is now the training video for trials. Right.
Yeah.
So, but regardless of all that, the one thing that I think that it's a little misdirected, in society, as I do believe that there is domestic violence on both sides, and I don't believe that it's looked at enough.
Right.
And so that's the only issue I have with all this. And I'm not saying that Johnny Depp's not guilty of it. What I'm saying is that regardless of it being Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, like, you got to look at it both ways. And I think that's kind of the problem with everything when we look at, in our society, because everybody says domestic violence, the first thing you go to is man versus woman, right? So that's the issue I have overall. And I just wish that we would look at that in a different light and say, and try to figure it out before it's automatically assumed that this is the case.
All right.
So that's the issue I have with that trial. So this is a really interesting one, and I want to let's talk about the Roe versus Wade leak. Right, and that's a whole separate issue versus what Roe versus Wade is, and abortion and pro-life, pro-choice, right? But because the leak is different. Before we get into the leak, what's your stance? Are you pro-life, you pro-choice?
I think Mike said it best when I was talking to him. I'm both. I am pro-life myself, but I am a man and I believe the woman has pro-choice. So I'm not going to tell her what to do with her body. Myself, I would like to be pro-life. I think that's the way, but it's not me having to carry the kid. And I mean, I can see on some cases like rape and stuff like that, it's just
obvious.
Right. I mean, so I can't tell a woman to not have an abortion. It's none of my business.
Yeah. So even if you're involved in that consensually, so I mean, outside of rape, incest, molestation, those kind of things, which obviously should be thrown out the window. Consensual sex between women and men. Are you still under the belief that the woman should have the choice, even though you were both involved?
Well, and it's kind of like I still do. It would just mean that relationship would probably hit the end of the road because of you not seeing eye to eye on what you want to do. And that's the hard thing too, because you don't want to. Sometimes if you don't want to be in a relationship because of a baby, right, and have it where they're getting held hostage. But I can't put it. It's just so hard. It's not I don't have to carry the baby. You have no idea what ramifications the baby could do to it. I mean, you still don't even. That's the other thing. It's like there's women out there that can't have if they give birth to a child, they might die.
Right. What if the woman has medical complications? Right. There's tons of things that goes with that, right?
Right. I mean, there's just, it's tough for me to say because it's not in my body.
Yeah. So a weird thing for me, and I'm completely pro-choice. I am not pro-life. I'm pro-choice, which I really believe that it's the women's right to choose, number one, right? I don't think the government or anybody should have any say. Supreme Court, I don't care how high you go, should have a choice in that, right? The only thing that I question, and it's not like I think this is the way it should be, but I do kind of question, should the consensual partner have a say in it? And I'm not saying that's right or wrong or that's the way it should be. That makes me wonder,
Well, in a way, I kind of agree if you're like saying, hey, you have the baby, I'll take care of them.
right? Or
But
like we consensually had sex, so now why do you get the choice to choose?
but the only thing would be that a woman has to carry the baby for
Right.
all that time, and then she has to give birth. And so that's the only issue I see. It's like one of those where it's like, one night of this leads to this, but then the dad could be like, well, the mom has to carry it for like 10 months,
Right. But if the dad said, I'll take care of the kid after you have it, but then you still have the woman who has 9 months of this terrible pregnancy,
Mhm.
but then, and so that's a little bit of an issue for me, but I'm completely pro-choice, where I don't think the government, the Supreme Court, I don't care how high you go, should never have the making people have the decision, right? Like when you're talking about that, there shouldn't be a law that says one way or another.
No,
You
shouldn't.
can't. Yeah. So that's
Well, and I'm
ridiculous.
just waiting for Junior, right? The movie Junior to
Yeah. Well,
happen.
yeah.
So then the guy,
When Arnold has a baby. And so even though I'm completely pro-choice, I do have a little bit of thought process in that, to where I'm thinking, is it okay to completely leave the dad out? Because the way I think about it, to be honest with you, it's like a car accident, right? It's an accident, but you can't just be like, hey, it was an accident, it's not my fault. Like, you were still a car accident, you're still responsible for it. You can't just like say it's not your fault, but at the same time, yes, the woman has to bear the burden of
well, and
it
I
the
feel
whole
like
time.
for both of us being fathers
Right.
and knowing the joy of having a child.
And that's our problem.
Yeah.
Because we'd never give up our kids.
No, never.
So regardless of the Roe versus Wade, because that's going to be a huge issue for so long, and that's it's such a big left right, like it's unbelievable.
Mhm.
That's one of the biggest issues when you think about it. Let's take COVID out for a second, because COVID's been ridiculous over the last 2 years. That's probably one of the top 2 or 3 issues.
And that's been going on for how many, like
Right.
over almost 50 years.
Yeah. That I mean, that's one of the biggest issues between Democrats, Republicans, or conservatives and progressives. Like, that's huge. But what I really wanted to talk about was the actual leak, though. So when you think about how it's been leaked into the system of, they're going to try to overturn Roe versus Wade. So first of all, like, they're trying to overturn Roe versus Wade. That's huge, right? But then the second part is, now you're going to leak it out to the public.
Well, and this is what I don't get. So it's not like the Supreme Court can just be like, we're going to overturn Roe v. Wade. They have to have a court case.
Right.
So it's not like this hasn't been in the pipelines forever, because it's like it takes forever to get to the Supreme Court.
So they have cases ready.
Yeah, they have to. Well, at least that's what I mean. They have to have cases ready now.
They do.
So it's like, how is this? It's kind of like our thing about UFOs like a year ago. It's like, why wasn't this like in the news for the last year or something?
Or 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. Because you can't just pop it up and be like, hey, we're going to overturn Roe versus Wade, right?
Right.
That's not going to happen. What happens is that they have these cases that have come up to that or are ready for that they're going to use as the example cases to overturn it. They have those cases. They have the addendum to do it. And now they're whether they're getting ready to do it or not, that's a moot point, because it's now been leaked to the public that they're getting ready to do it. So why do that? So what so here's my question. I've seen a lot of Democrat left people talking about they're doing that on purpose. Like they're putting it out there to create separation. And then I've seen some right talk about the left did it because it's coming up on midterms and they're trying to increase the popular vote because Biden's so far down. So when you look at those two issues, like, are either of those
it wouldn't really affect Biden being down because the midterm has nothing to do with him. It's about all the incumbents and everything trying to get in the Senate and governors and all of that. So if they're trying to work it so they can get a more majority, I could see that. But I feel like I would have thought the reason it was being leaked was so you could get public outrage.
Does that help the Democrats or does that help the Republicans when you talk about public outrage over?
Oh, it would help the Democrats.
Right.
I mean, you already got people going out there, like celebrities, people on Facebook and all this, what's right for it's not our choice, it's pro-choice,
Right.
So it's like the new rally cry. Who cares about Ukraine now, right?
I mean, you haven't heard about Ukraine for the last 2-3 weeks.
Right.
Well, and that's what the Republicans are talking about, is that they're trying to create this public outrage to get Democrats back in the saddle, right? Some of the Democrats that aren't on that approval rating for the Democratic side right now, get them back in there. So what do you think about the Democrats over the last 2 years since, what is it? Yeah, about 2 years now, right? We're close. No, it's only like a year and like 4 months. But you've lost a lot of Democratic approval in the last year and 4 months, right?
Yeah, well, I believe it correlates big time with COVID fatigue.
Yeah.
People are done. It doesn't matter what side, they're done with masks, they're done with all the regulations. And I think that's why everyone's like, and then you got these, like around here, you got the like Stan Pullian and everything. Their rally cry is about government control and how we don't want it.
Right.
And that's, I mean, a lot of, and that, the COVID hurt so many different people in so many different ways. Like how many businesses went out of business because of certain restrictions. And to go like to Big Mike's point, like just laissez-faire rules too. It's like, we're doing this, but you don't have to wear a mask when you're eating at a table. So like COVID goes away when you're sitting at a table.
Yeah, versus
so it's kind of a weird thing.
Bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like people are just done with COVID, and everyone has put COVID to the Democrats because they're the ones they were trying to help it. And that's the thing, you had Trump on the front lines saying anti stuff about it and how it wasn't really that bad. And then everyone under him took that and went 20,000 times farther than what he was saying. And so then it became that huge divide. And now people are done with COVID. So now they're going with, we got to go with these people because we're anti-COVID.
Well, that's the question, is like, do they need something else to rally them? If you're in the Democratic Party, like, do you leak that to try to regain some of those people?
It's it's kind of smart because then
I mean, you think about it, it is really smart, right?
yeah, I mean, I've had it before. So like when we were voting the last time around, we were looking and we go through, me and my wife go through and we read everyone's thing. We don't look at Republican or Democrat, but we look at like what they're doing. And we're going through and we're reading and like, oh, okay, da da da. And then they're like, nope, this one's completely anti-vaccinations.
Right.
Done. I don't want anything to do with that person. So it's like, but if your core value is pro-choice,
Right.
then that's a huge one. That's like, that's where you got to those dating sites where they're talking, oh, I won't date a Republican. I won't date someone who's, pro-life or whatever. That's been one of the biggest dividing points in our country for so long.
That's why it makes me wonder when you talk about a leak, like who's actually leaking this? Because at first, when you think about it, you'd think it'd be a Republican leaking it, right? But then if you get deeper into it, you're like, well, no, maybe it'd be a Democrat leaking this because you might get some more support. You might grab some of those people who have COVID fatigue, or they're tired of gas prices raising, or tired of inflation, or tired of the Fed raising the mortgage prices or the mortgage interest, right? But if you can get into their mind under a pro-choice, now you're going to grab some more people back in, regardless of what's happening with the economy, regardless of what's happening with COVID, regardless of what's happening with everything, right? So maybe they're trying to grab some of those people back.
This is a perfect one for the conspiracy theory episode.
Well, I mean, it's hard because, when you're talking about conspiracies, like that's a different type of thing than just control, and like mind control or, political control. That's different, right?
I think though the thing is we've started to realize, because it is more privatized, that the media is not there to give us just the news. They're there to give us their slant.
Yep. Well, and just like we were talking about Chappelle earlier, every Chappelle. So when I watched Chappelle things on YouTube, it was different. It was like, here's what happened to Chappelle. This was horrible. Da da da. When I saw some of the CBS, MSNBC Chappelle things, they were like, oh, Chappelle got attacked, but it was because he was talking negatively about LGBTQ and talking negatively about all these things. And it's like, and then now you're like, well, what I heard was it was because this guy was just a rapper. But the mainstream media was telling a whole different narrative. So how many people are watching that?
I feel like, and this comes back to like, here's a sports analogy, since we haven't had any sports in this, but like you're a Bears fan, I'm a Raiders fan. We know our teams very well, but like the national media doesn't know them as much. So they pick these narratives, even if it doesn't fit anymore.
Right.
And that's how I feel like it's like, oh, the only thing we know about Chappelle is what has gone on with this stand-up.
Right.
So this must be why.
Because he's
and they didn't watch his stand-up. They have no idea what he was saying.
Yeah, and they're just pushing that narrative as why he got attacked instead of like what might be the actual reason for that dude coming on stage, which could be a very insignificant reason. Right. But now, you've got hundreds of millions of people who have watched that media report thinking Chappelle got attacked because of the way he speaks negatively about race. And they're like, good. Yeah. And they're like, yeah. And they're following. They're like, yeah, that's okay. We don't mind this guy attacking him. And then that grows into, more support, but also more people with that same thought process.
Right. Well, then also it makes Chappelle even more popular also.
Right. Well, I mean, this is probably making him more popular than he's been since Chappelle Show.
Yeah.
I mean, he was huge popular then, but since then, he hasn't been, super popular, but you could find Chappelle right now on more posts and more YouTube and more internet blogs than you have found him since what it was like 28, right? 2008.
Well, and then let's just put this here. Those 2 seasons of Chappelle Show are 2 of the most amazing TV show seasons ever.
And most people have never seen it. That's the problem. Like, you get some, and when you talk about racism, when you talk about like, how people view what the way black people and white people look at things, and then you watch the Chappelle Show, it gives you a whole different thought processes of it. And if people haven't seen it and you're listening, you're watching, you have to see it because it will change your thought process. And I think that's what he was trying to do.
Well, I feel like he's a comedian in the ways of Richard Pryor and George Carlin and stuff like that, where it was nothing is off limits.
Right.
And that's how he did. And then now he makes fun of transgender or whatever. And now something is off limits. And he's like, wait a minute. I've been making fun of everyone my entire career. Now I can't.
Yeah. And I agree. I mean, that's totally what he does. He was trying to hit all fields, right? He was trying to hit everything. He was trying to help people understand that it's not about black and white, right? It's about black making fun of black. It's about black making fun of white and white making fun of black. Like he was hitting every aspect. And that's what was great about that. And it was unfortunate that didn't grow. Like his concept didn't grow.
Right.
Yeah. So that was great too. So let's wrap it up here. So the last thing we were talking about the RV Wade leak. What do you think's going to happen with that? Like, do you have any thought process of, is that going to get overturned, or how will that affect society? Like, if it does get overturned, like, is that going to be a big blow up?
I don't think it's going to get overturned. Like, the history of the Supreme Court has been, they're pretty conservative when it comes to overturning stuff that they've done before. And I just feel like everyone likes to think of, oh, well, that guy's a Republican, that's a Democrat. That's not the way Supreme Court acts. It just goes by what they see and what they do. And that's another one. Is like they built up Ruth Bader Ginsburg as like this greatest justice of all time. And no one even knows she wasn't the first woman. Sandra Day O'Connor, no one talks about her at all.
Right.
You know why? Because she's a Republican. And she didn't talk about politics. Supreme Court justices should not be talking about politics at all.
Not at all.
I shouldn't know what your political party is.
I mean, with that said, should there even be a Supreme Court? Like, do we even need this level of,
you do need the level of checks and balances, because you can't have someone become president and then make whatever laws they want.
Yeah.
This is the way to stop that from happening. But yeah, it's hard for me because I don't know. It's a hard one to say because we've become so political now that like whoever gets nominated for the Supreme Court, no matter what it is, they just get rang through the coals nonstop about who they are and what they are.
Right.
And just,
I mean, it's almost hard to believe that they could be non-political, right?
Right.
And I guess that's my issue that I have. And I'll start, I go back to Clarence Thomas was when it first started for me. from him forward, I really feel like it became about, what they did, what they didn't do, and their political sides.
Yeah,
And I
that was
think
the biggest publicized one, and then ever since then.
I think kind of ruined the idea of the Supreme Court. So it's tough for me to really support the Supreme Court at this point and say we need that,
Right.
And the same way we need government, same way we need the Senate, same way we need Congress, so all those things go in that. So on that same point, when you're saying, when I was asking you that, the reason I was asking is because I actually don't believe that it should be a Supreme Court decision. I don't think that they should be able to overturn, Roe versus Wade. I don't even think they should be involved in it, to be honest with you. And so that's a hard part for me to say that any court or government or, state should have those ability to make laws or decisions for especially the females, right? Or what we politically correctly call them what are they, the producers. Remember what they call them. You can't call them women anymore because now you have men, women, and pronouns.
Well, and the weird thing to me that it's just, if you look at this and you have the whole, you don't want government involved in this. You know what kind of ideology that is? That's actually what Republicans used to stand for.
Right.
There was, I don't want government involvement in things. And the Democrats were the ones who are like, let's have government involvement. And so this is kind of weird and funny in a way where now you're having Roe v. Wade is the Republicans wanting more government control.
Right. But it's also back when you're talking about those early times, they also were very religiously persuaded, which is an issue, right? Because we're going to base our lives and our laws and everything based on the Bible. I mean, come on. Like, you're talking about something that was not even really written, but like spoken word and like passed on and changed over thousands of years to whatever you want it to be. And then we're like, no, that's gospel. You're like, no, it's not. You don't even know what gospel is. Like, you can't really say that's what it was because you weren't there. Like, you didn't write it. And so that was the issue with the early Republicans, because they were very religious based. But now it's kind of flipped, and you're right. Now they're like pushing that government and that this is the way it should be, because this is what do they call that? They call it the societal check, or they call it, I don't remember what they call it, but it's being part of society. Yeah. So, man, that was good stuff. Yeah, I wish we had Mike and Wes here to talk about that, but we'll get their thoughts on it, and hopefully we'll get them to ring in next time. I really want to get into next time the conspiracies, talk about some of those. Like, I have some good Pearl Harbor stuff for you guys. So if you guys are listening, I'll get that Pearl Harbor stuff to you next time. What were you going to do?
The greatest conspiracy of all times.
JFK.
Yes.
Oh, man. So Pearl Harbor, JFK, man, we'll get that next time. So don't forget to subscribe and like, hit the notification bell. Hit us next time. Just remember, we're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts now. We're on YouTube. You guys can see us everywhere. Don't forget to subscribe and like. We'll see you guys next time.